Firstly, if you're a physical collector, then use our links to save 5% on PlayAsia, and we've got a good old chunk of the Nixie Joy-Con that you'll see in this video. All the links and info are in the description. The Pillars of the Earth originally released in 1989 as a novel from Ken Follett. It was praised for its intricate detail, accurate depiction of past events, but all the while telling a fictional emotive tale. The team from German studio Daedalic decided it would be the perfect series of novels to use as inspiration for the game which shares its name. As a huge adventure game fan, I was instantly drawn in by the lavish hand-drawn visuals that took me back to my youth playing games from Revolution and Westwood. Have designers Matthias Kemp, Kevin Mentz and Valentina Tamer created a revolution in the adventure genre, or is it yet another crumbling pillar? Well, my name's Mark Walker, welcome back to SwitchUp, now let's find out. Without spoilers, the plot centres around the 3 different books, allowing you to start at either one of them. The first of these, From the Ashes, is set in and around Kingsbridge Priory, following the recent demise of the previous prior. But before any of that, we're introduced to Tom and his family as his wife is about to give birth. It's a harrowing scene and is the perfect introduction to this harsh and unforgiving world. What stands out about the narrative are the often realistic but painful decisions that are made by the protagonists. Callous murders, decisions that will affect the entire outcome of their lineage, but which are well and truly within grey areas. In a move similar to the Telltale series, your decisions are tracked and logged, and there will be several diverging paths that will to some degree impact the narrative. Finally, we are introduced to the children of a disgraced Earl. What I loved is how these stories overlap, how your decisions directly impact the lives of the other characters you end up playing, and it does a great job of making you feel like they're perhaps more impactful on the overall narrative than they are, usually leveraging emotion to do this. Children. The gameplay then is separated through several different characters. It takes the form of a traditional point-and-click adventure. However, you control the character directly with the left stick, and the right stick is your inventory. You can also use buttons to look, talk, and use items. And I think it's a good idea that they opted to have looking at things not narrated. It's one of those things you want to quickly get the information, but hearing the same tropes over and over would have been quite irritating, and certainly has been in the past. It's a really nice system, and I loved that they had talking points added to that right stick radial menu. It removes what can historically be quite a clunky genre and makes it streamlined. If you want to show someone an item, you simply use the right stick to have that highlighted and then press the X button. The same would go for using it. Now each area will have a specific objective, but you do have some freedom about how you go about it. Often there will be multiple different ways you can accomplish the same task, but there is usually a correct way. Where it falls down in that regard is for me where historically traditional point and clicks have suffered also. Where do they draw the line between an acceptable decision and one which leads to your death? Now certainly Ken Follett's Pillars of the Earth won't be offing the player constantly, but there are certain decisions that will lead to you having to restart from a checkpoint, although as I say, these are few and far between. I much preferred it when it allowed you to make bad choices but then used emotional consequences as your punishment, but I understand that pulling a knife on a priest and threatening to cut his throat probably wasn't my best choice and would end up in my untimely demise. The gameplay structure remains quite consistent. It's certainly not a head-scratching puzzler, with the real work on the player's part being navigating conversations and manipulating situations to get your desired outcomes. And it's certainly a mechanic that works well here. The now familiar time-based responses are indicated with a reducing radial wheel, and while you can save and reload at any point, the pacing is such that I wanted to play out the consequences of my choices and see where these rabbit holes led. One pothole that the game doesn't avoid is in its linearity. Certain decisions or choices feel ever so slightly forced, as they're clearly lifted directly from the novels, but thankfully they still introduce a number of red herrings and choices which aren't present within those. Oftentimes you'll find yourself navigating larger areas. Interactable NPCs are indicated with a small round circle, and I love the freedom of just being able to go where I wanted. There are some standout areas, and the locations and scenery are beautiful. The novels these are based on were critically acclaimed for their realistic, written depiction of an era, and Daedalic have done justice to that with the large map of Shiring, with a choose-your-own-adventure style "where do I go next?", cleverly making the player feel like they're in much more control of the overarching narrative. I'd make a slightly unusual comparison to Game of Thrones. At its best, it shocked you with just how harsh and blunt it could be, and that's what Pillars of the Earth does, while allowing you to take control of 3 different groups of characters who all have entirely different moral compass, following the path of redemption, of God, and also justice. As an adventure game fan myself, this is exactly what I wanted. Now, other mechanics that are included are some quick time-based on-screen events, which work well enough, but there's a weighting to the movement that can feel a little awkward, with a slight input delay. Thankfully, you're given enough time so that even if you make a mistake, they're relatively easy checks to pass. Overall then, Ken Follett's Pillars of the Earth on Nintendo Switch is a lovely experience. It's easy to control using the analog stick to move your character around, but I would love to see them implement some form of touchscreen controls for those playing in handheld. The gameplay, while relatively safe, does a great job of depicting the narrative upon which these are based, and the dank and unforgiving world that it's set makes for the perfect historical backdrop upon which to build an adventure. Gameplay scores 16 out of 20, and the controls without the touch functionality and with a slightly hit and miss run button, they score 15 out of 20. Visually, this is a stunning game, absolutely beautiful. It's intricately detailed, and based on historically accurate drawings, it's a real treat for the eyes. Not only does it have those vast, hand-painted scenes, it will often shift into a closer perspective, and this has a distinctly hand-drawn animated style that works really well. Unfortunately, I do have to mention performance. While it runs absolutely fine, there are a couple of visual bugs. Only occasionally, I noticed a few glitchy moments with on-screen characters flickering in and out, and I did experience one crash. Now, with all of that said, artistically speaking, it's an incredible looking game. It just goes to show that you don't need fancy 3D visuals. This more classic style can look stunning. That's not to say it doesn't include some more modern effects. Some of the parallax areas, such as the scenes with snow or several layers of background, really look impressive. But composer Tilo Alperman has produced a masterful piece of work. It's a soundtrack you could happily listen to on its own, and which marries itself perfectly with the visuals and narrative. This is all supplemented by a very good voice cast. In fact, there are over 40 hours of voiceovers in the game.
Plenty of work for at least another month. For all of you. I trust Tom.
I say we stay.
Including the author Ken himself, which is a really nice touch. That Prague Philharmonic Orchestra have created almost a perfect soundtrack here. Visuals and performance, well, they lose a couple of points because of the slight bugginess I experienced, but still that style is so good. They score 16 out of 20. The audio scores an easy 20 out of 20. Ken Follett's The Pillars of the Earth will set you back £17.99 or your regional equivalent, and that covers the 3 books, which can be played in any order. For me, this is the perfect price. If you're an adventure game fan, it's a wonderful experience. And while it doesn't escape some of the genre's more clunky elements, it does more than enough narratively with its character, world, and audio design to create a truly engrossing experience. What it doesn't have is the difficulty that some might be looking for. There aren't the complex puzzles. These are generally relatively simplistic, with the draw here being steering the narrative and those moral grey choices that you'll have to make within a very harsh and unforgiving world. The few performance quirks I experienced will also slightly impact the value, but I still give that 16 out of 20. If you're after a narrative adventure filled with difficult decisions and an excellent story, then this one's for you. It gets a SwitchUp score of 83%. A big thanks to Daedalic for the review copy. Let us know in the comments. I know these games don't suit everyone's tastes, but Old Man Walker, growing up on Monkey Island and Beneath a Steel Sky, absolutely bloody loved it. A thanks to our Patreons and members, and if you want to save yourself 5% over at PlayAsia, use all the codes and the links in the description. And we've also got quite a good chunk of money off those Nixie controllers if you want to check those out. They are my daily drivers. For all things Switch, all the time, keep it Switch up. Cheers guys, see ya!